Good morning, everybody. We are starting our podcast this morning, Three Plastic Surgeons and a Microphone. I am, of course, Dr. Sal Pacella in San Diego, California at San Diego Plastic Surgeon. I'm joined by my colleagues, Dr. Sam Rhee in Paramus, New Jersey at Bergen Cosmetic, and of course, Dr. Sam Jejurikar in Dallas at Sam Jejurikar. How are you guys this morning?
Doing great.
Doing amazing.
All right. Well, we're going to shift topics a little bit here and talk about the financial aspects of affording and financing plastic surgery. But before we get into this, let's go through our disclosure real quick.
This show is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is for informational purposes only. Treatment and results may vary based upon the circumstances, situation, and medical judgment after appropriate discussion. Always take the advice of your surgeon or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding medical care, and never disregard professional medical advice or delay seeking advice because of something you may see in the show. Back to you, Dr. Pacella.
All right, Jen. So we deal with a discipline, a career where the services we offer are not super inexpensive. Sometimes they can be very costly, very pricey. And, the issues are not everyone can afford it in the same period of time. And so we're going to talk today about how patients can afford plastic surgery, what financial options are there, and kind of go from there, what your thoughts are. So let's start with both of you here. So maybe tell us a little bit about your patient population, kind of in general, the services you offer, range, et cetera, and how you deal with financing.
I guess I can start. I mean, like you said, plastic surgery, there's a wide range of costs involved. It can be relatively inexpensive for some operations, which are quick. Then for more extensive, longer operations, you can be looking at, operations that are, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, which is not inexpensive. And so you meet patients from all walks of life. For some people, it is relatively inexpensive to have plastic surgery, but for others, it's a major investment. We, through our practice, definitely utilize a variety of financing options. And I'm really curious. I know Dr. Rhee's got a lot he wants to say about this, but there are different options that our patients will utilize. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Rhee and sort of curious what he has to say about this.
Yeah, I would like both you guys to chime in terms of the demographics of your patients, what you see patients choosing in terms of how they choose to pay as we go along. And maybe there are some options here that I haven't listed that you could actually discuss or see what works for you and your patients. So obviously, as Sal said, it's expensive for a lot of these types of procedures. And obviously, these are also elective procedures. So these are not things that must happen like other necessary medical procedures, for example. But for a lot of patients, these are extremely important procedures that they want very much. And they can certainly impact somebody's personal quality of life, their self-esteem. I have seen patients transformed literally in terms of what they've done after having something that was so meaningful to them in terms of changing their appearance and their self-worth, actually, in some cases. So that being said, let's understand that these are valuable procedures. These are not often frivolous procedures, but they're also procedures that require substantial investment. So these are not something that someone should just take on a whim because they are expensive. But if decided upon properly with your plastic surgeon, can be very impactful and they can be worth the investment. So I think,
go ahead. Well, sorry to interrupt, but I think it's helpful to kind of I think it's helpful to kind of describe a little bit about our patient demographics and kind of how that may impact the financing part of things. So even in your own lives, James, when you were 20, 25 years old, I'm going to guess that each of you probably did not have a ton of disposable income or any disposable income. Looking back at my career when I was a college student, a medical student, a resident, it was a challenge to even pay for a car payment, and so, that when we're younger, obviously that earning potential is not there. As you get older, mid-aged, and in your retirement years, the idea is potentially have a little bit more disposable income. With that being said, I see really three kind of peaks of patients in my practice when it comes to cosmetic surgery. So there's kind of the younger demographic. So I would say in the early mid-20s. And the two big procedures we see in that demographic are really breast augmentation, and to me, in my practice, rhinoplasty. And so, if you think about it, breast augmentations are, on the scheme of things, relatively more affordable than other procedures. Rhinoplasty is probably a bit more expensive than breast augmentation. But these are procedures that can drastically change a young person's life. I sort of look at, the average patient, that I see in rhinoplasties in her 20s, beautiful young lady, but has kind of big hump on her nose, tip is hanging down. And that's a life-changing event for me. The second tier of patients I see are sort of in the middle age range, say late 30s, early 40s, kind of the housewives, the moms, mommy makeover. You've had children, your kind of children are a little bit grown, may or may not have a little bit of the disposable income to go on vacation or whatever. And those procedures are kind of getting a little bit more expensive. Commonly see procedures like breast lifts, breast augmentations, coupled with tummy tucks, abdominoplasty, liposuction, maybe a little bit of facial surgery. As we sort of look at the next tier of patients, these are sort of patients who are a little bit more obviously advanced in their life, late 50s, early 60s. A lot of those patients are kind of, in general, looking at facial procedures to make themselves look younger, facelifts, fat transfer, blepharoplasty, etc. On the scheme of things, much, much more of an expensive operation compared to, say, the average breast operation, because it takes a little bit longer to do. And so those are patients I see that are relatively, when it comes to pricing, a little bit more price insensitive. They have a little bit more resources. Maybe they've paid off their house, they've paid off their cars, their kids are out of college, and those are patients I think that we see can oftentimes have a little bit more flexibility with their financing. And I think the key is, as surgeons, we don't want to discard any of those patients, any of those groups. So we want to really work with everybody to give the procedure that they need and hopefully in an affordable manner.
I think that's a really nice summary. So I really like that, that characterization. And I think I would agree with pretty much 99% of that. I see some liposuction in that younger age group, and there's some young people that have a disproportionate amount of money, and there's some older patients that have less money. But I think that's very true. And when you see patients and that it is going to be a stretch financially, the key is, it's to budget, sort of figure out what financing options are available, and to never engage in plastic surgery that you don't think you can afford. And so the same discipline that you would engage in your life to make sure that you can afford your car payment, your house payment, your groceries, your entertainment expenses. Plastic surgery needs to also sort of fall into that because it is a major expense, particularly with some of these operations that happen later in life. And every patient, regardless of their age or which bracket they fall into, needs to make sure that it's something that they find to be affordable. And so,
right. And I think you make a really good point here as to not do a procedure that you think is going to be, number one, unaffordable for you and not realistic. But I would sort of talk about the converse as well, which is, many times we see patients that have multiple issues. So for example, common thing we see, I think we all see, is a patient who has had full breast implants. Maybe they've got a little bit of breastosis, and they may need a multiple stage procedure. So for example, it's not uncommon for patients with older implants to need implants, again, soft tissue support, and a breast lift. Okay. And all three of those things come with a price tag. Not uncommonly, I see patients that say, well, I can't really afford the soft tissue support to hold the breast in position and lift I just want to swap out my implants and be done with it. And I think that's a wrong approach. Many times when we give patients an A, B, and C, and they may choose C, I think that leads to significant unhappiness. So not only have they spent the money, but they're going to be unhappy with the results. So I routinely counsel patients, unless you have a financing option, I would hold off on doing any surgery until you can really do the surgery.
Great advice. That's perfect advice.
Agree 1,000%. Half measures often do not lead to satisfaction. So let's talk about that. So obviously, this is not necessarily for people who are liquid enough to just dump $15,000, $20,000 out at a pop. Like if you're one of those people, then you shouldn't be listening to this, because you should just go to your plastic surgeon and throw down that cash and you're good to go. But for the rest of us, so maybe if that's 95% of the world out there, this is for the 5% of us who's out here, working to save our money. The first thing obviously would be the most financially savvy way of doing it, which is budgeting and saving up in advance. You're not borrowing money from a lender or charging a credit card. You don't have to pay interest, fees, or penalties. This is an elective procedure, so you may have time to choose, to save, but it takes a lot of discipline to do that. If your procedure is $15,000, you would have to save $625 a month for 2 years in order to pay for that. Now, some people would say that is completely unreasonable. I don't have the discipline to do that. And some people would say, I could do this. One of our old bosses, Dr. Kuzan, I don't know if you ever heard him say this, but he used to say there are only 3 things that you should borrow money for, right? Education, car, and a house. You shouldn't be borrowing money to go partying or, for clothes. Those are the 3 major expenses. And
did he also say after that, did he say, okay?
Well, and the thing is, as much as I've learned from Dr. Kuzan, I would respectfully completely disagree with that statement.
Oh.
Because as you learn when you get an MBA, and Dr. Pacella will agree to this, there's this phenomena that if you can borrow money at a rate that's lower than what you can put that money away for and invest. Let's say you're going to borrow that $15,000 and you're going to make that payment instead, but instead you're going to use that money to earn money at a greater interest rate than that. Then ultimately you're going to actually better off borrowing money if you can do so at a lower rate. And some of the financing options that you're going to talk about have very favorable interest rates. So continue, please. Dr.
Yes.
Kuzan, I learned a lot about plastic surgery from, but he's not my economic advisor by any stretch of the, and no offense, Bill, if you happen to be listening to this.
Good point. There's a little
the things that I learned getting an MBA, I'm going to value over that.
Very good. The first option I'm going to mention only because I don't know anyone who actually does this, but apparently there are still some plastic surgeons out there that will enroll patients into their own payment plan. I don't know if you know of anyone who does this, but if a doctor can do this for you, that's one possible option. You can split your costs into smaller monthly payments. You may or may not have to pay interest with that physician or go through a credit check. The problem is that I don't know that many doctors do that. And if you don't pay that physician, you may end up it might be going into collections, which would be a whole other sort of kettle of fish. What do you guys think of this?
I don't actually know anyone that does this. So yeah, if you had options available to you, great. Most plastic surgeons just engage with third-party lenders though for this.
Yeah, I agree. It's, sometimes when surgeons engage in the practice of being the borrowing agents, I think, that's not a business model that lends itself to plastic surgery. That's a lending model. And, the average plastic surgeon is good at doing surgery, but not really finance.
Agreed. Let's talk about the most popular financing option out there for plastic surgery procedures right now, which is Care Credit. And everyone's heard of it. It's a very popular way it's a medical credit card that you can use to finance plastic surgery. They offer promotional financing, and usually for a certain period, either a few months or a few years, you can break up your costs of your procedure into smaller monthly payments at a 0 APR or reduced APR. And currently, or at least what I saw, you can get zero APR financing. So no interest if you pay within, and then you can have periods of either 6, 12, 18, or 24 months. You can also get reduced APR financing if you wish, like at about 15% for 24 months, 16% for 36 months, or 17% at 48 months, if you so choose. There's no fee for early repayment. It's very convenient, and a lot of patients do qualify. The issue is that if you don't adhere to the terms that they set exactly, they will throw all of that deferred interest onto your loan onto your loan charge. And the APR can be very high. And if you went for a personal loan, you could probably actually get a lower APR. And not all medical providers will take care credit. So what are your thoughts about care credit?
We do a fairly high volume of care credit in my practice. We don't accept many of their plans because some of the plans shift a pretty high percentage of those fees onto the surgeon. But there are some low interest plans that our office does participate in. And this kind of goes along with what you were referring to earlier in terms of, is it worth borrowing money? Well, you can get an interest rate of 2.9%, let's say, which is, I know, one of the plans that we accept from a medical credit card. And then you can turn around and take that money and put it into a high interest savings account, which gives you a higher percentage yield than that, which many of them are doing right now, given the interest rate environment that we're in. That's actually a thing to do for you from a personal investment standpoint.
Yeah, we actually don't use care credit. We have actually some relationships with some local credit unions that do kind of offer some competitive rates for patients that we usually refer patients to. But my office doesn't really have a formal relationship with any of the financing companies.
We use care credit, we use patient fi, we use Alpian credit. There's a lot of different credit services that are out there.
Yes. And there are a number listed out there. And so if that's something you should be interested in, you should definitely check out not just care credit, but all of the other sort of similar types of finance companies that are out there that offer medical credit cards. You could also take out a credit card with a 0% APR offer. There are a lot of introductory APR, 0% APR offers for credit cards. They usually last up to about 21 months. If you have great credit, you could actually put it onto that card. And as Sam said, if you're using that money to make more money, then you would actually be paying less at the end, as long as you avoid paying the interest by paying off your balance within that specified time. Have you had patients who sort of use credit cards in this way?
I don't know. I have patients that pay on credit card, but I'm not sure what they're doing.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. The last thing that I would want to mention is a fixed rate personal loan. So you can take an unsecured personal loan, which patients can do, again, which can range from $1,000 to $5,000 fixed APR and monthly payment. Might not be the cheapest alternative versus other plastic surgery loans. But it might be better than just putting it on straight up on your credit card. Let's suppose if you don't have an introductory APR offer on your credit card and you're just thinking about doing that, you might actually get a better deal just by taking out a straight personal loan. You have to have probably pretty good credit for it. The good thing is that they're usually unsecured, so you don't have to put up collateral in order to get that loan. But if you are not of good credit, and most of them that I've listed look like they're at least 600 or above in terms of your credit score, you may not qualify, or the the interest rate may be super, super high.
I think that's a great option for people as well. You know, a few podcasts ago, Dr. Pacella told us an analogy that he likes to tell patients about paying for plastic surgery and the cost of a car. Could you tell that again? Because I love that analogy, and I will admit that I've stolen it, but I want you to be the one to say it again on the podcast.
Right. So that's a good place to end. So I think you can choose your car of choice, either a Tesla, Prius, etc. So I oftentimes tell patients when, they're concerned about the cost or the price, or they're surprised at the cost. I oftentimes tell them, look, cosmetic surgery is a hell of a lot cheaper than a Prius, but it's going to last you a lot longer. So,
Yeah. And, I think the bottom line, I think that was really informative saying there are options that are available to people. I think what I would talk to my patients the same way I would look at a financial decision myself. Budget out over the next 2 years, see how financing or a personal loan or a 0% APR credit card factors into your life. Make sure you can afford it. And you'll find that if you are looking at over that time horizon over 2 years, plastic surgery procedures that on the surface seem unapproachable can actually be quite affordable. It's something you can fit into your life, and it can have a profound impact on your life.
right. I also think that it's important, I think, for our audience here that, that the discipline of plastic surgery is a huge bell curve of types of surgeons, right? And I think it's important to understand the three of us are not salespeople by any means. We are absolutely, all three of us, committed to doing the absolute thing for a patient. And that doesn't necessarily mean surgically. We would never want any patient to get in a position where they overfinance themselves or do a surgery they're not prepared for and then end up regretting it financially the rest of their life. That's our job as surgeons as well. And so we want to give that advice to you. If you feel pressure financially, or if you feel like somebody is trying to do a sales job on you, you're getting a bad feeling about that, then your instinct is probably correct.
Great word, Sal.
Well, gents, thank you so much. That's been a really interesting shift in topics today. So with that, we're going to sign off and talk to you soon.
Take care.
Take care, gentlemen.